Okay, let's just get this out of the way. I'm the asshole. I'm the villain of this story, no question. But I need to tell anyone, because the silence in this apartment is going to make me lose my mind. Everett is gone. His keys are on the counter, next to a stack of mail I haven't had the energy to open. The indentation his head made on his pillow is still there. It's a museum of a life I deliberately, meticulously blew up. And why? Because I was lonely. I know how pathetic and cliché that sounds, but you have to understand. It wasn't a normal, I wish I had a date for Friday night kind of loneliness. It was a desperate, clawing at the walls kind of void that I was terrified would swallow me whole. He was supposed to be a temporary solution, a placeholder, a game I invented to prove to myself that I could still make someone want me, that I wasn't completely broken. It was a selfish, calculated act of self-preservation. It was never supposed to be real. He was never supposed to be him. So how the hell did I end up here, sitting in the ruins of something beautiful that I never even deserved in the first place? Before Everett, my life was a flatline. I had just moved to Denver for a demanding job in corporate finance, leaving behind the wreckage of a brutal, year-long relationship that had scooped me out and left an empty shell. My ex was a whirlwind of passion and unpredictability, a charismatic artist who left a trail of emotional chaos wherever he went. He left me with a deep-seated terror of emotional risk, a phobia of anything that wasn't stable and predictable. The silence in my new, sparsely furnished apartment was a physical presence. It wasn't just quiet, it was a high-pitched ringing in my ears, the sound of absolute solitude. The air was thick with it. I'd order takeout for one and watch the lights of other people's lives flicker on in the buildings across the street, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. This loneliness was a sickness, a gaping wound, and I decided to treat it with the same cold logic I applied to my quarterly reports. So, I downloaded the app. But I wasn't looking for love, I was sourcing a solution. I approached it like a corporate project, which I privately dubbed Project Antidote. I spent hours swiping left, ruthlessly filtering out any hint of complication. The brooding guitarist with soulful eyes? Left. The rock-climbing nomad whose job was listed as adventurer? Left. They were all variables I couldn't control, risks I refused to take again. And then I found Everett. His profile was the epitome of safe. A degree in accounting, a stable job in logistics, a few pictures with his goofy golden retriever, Buster. His bio was 5 bullet points of pleasant predictability. Hiking on weekends, trying new breweries, big fan of The Office, looking for something real. No drama. He wasn't a mystery to be solved, he was a finished product, stable and guaranteed. He was perfect. Our meeting wasn't fate, it was an acquisition. I studied his profile like a case file. For our first date, I chose a coffee shop that was quiet but not too intimate. I wore a cashmere sweater that was soft and approachable. I rehearsed anecdotes that made me sound interesting but not intimidating, wounded but not broken. When he talked about the intricacies of freight logistics, I leaned in, my eyes wide with a feigned fascination I absolutely did not feel. I mirrored his posture, a cheap psychological trick I'd read about online. I told him a sanitized version of my last breakup, painting myself as the heartbroken but resilient victim, not the co-conspirator in a toxic implosion. It was a flawless performance. He walked me to my car, his smile so genuine it almost hurt to look at, and told me he'd had the best time. When I got home, I didn't feel happy or excited. I felt nothing, just the quiet hum of a machine working as intended. Phase 1 was complete. The game was supposed to have rules and exit strategy. But the initial success of Project Antidote was so complete, so intoxicating, that I lost control of the variables. The first date bled into a second, then a third. Soon, we were spending entire weekends together. The terrifying silence of my apartment was replaced by the easy rhythm of his presence. The sound of his electric toothbrush in the morning, the smell of the coffee he always insisted on making, the comfortable weight of his arm around me on the sofa. Everett's goodness wasn't a performance, it was his factory setting. It was in the small, almost imperceptible things. He remembered I'd offhandedly mentioned a love for a specific, obscure brand of sour candy during our first date, and he showed up to our fourth with a bag of it. "Saw this at the gas station and thought of you," he said, so casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. For him, it was. For me, it felt like a spotlight had been switched on in a dark room, illuminating my fraudulence. The first major crack in my composure came when I got a nasty flu. I texted him to cancel a date, expecting a simple, feel better. Instead, 2 hours later, my doorbell rang. He was standing there, looking worried, holding a grocery bag. Inside was chicken soup from my favorite deli, a bottle of Gatorade, and a box of cold medicine. He spent the entire evening on my couch, watching a terrible action movie on low volume while I slept, just to make sure I was okay. As I drifted in and out of a feverish sleep, I watched him through half-closed eyes, and a terrifying thought surfaced. No one has ever done this for me before. Every spoonful of soup he fed me felt like a lie I was swallowing. But another voice, a colder, more honest one, whispered, "You don't deserve this. He's caring for a ghost, a character you invented." He introduced me to his friends, a warm, boisterous group who welcomed me without reservation. They weren't the cynical, guarded people I was used to. They were open and kind. They asked me about my job, my family, my dreams, and I fed them the same curated lines I'd fed Everett. They looked at me and saw the person he described, smart, funny, and finally ready for a good guy. They saw the happy, stable woman he was falling in love with, not the calculating imposter who was using their friend as an emotional shield. I'd sit there, smiling and laughing at their inside jokes, while my stomach twisted into a knot of pure, unadulterated guilt. My mantra became, just one more week. I'd tell it to myself every Sunday night as he left my apartment. Just one more week of this warmth, then I'll end it. I'll let him down gently. But the week would pass, and the thought of returning to that crushing silence was more terrifying than the guilt. The comfort he provided was a drug, and I was a full-blown addict. I was sinking, but the water was warm. I was so busy enjoying the reprieve from my own loneliness that I failed to see I wasn't just sinking myself. I was pulling him down with me. The point of no return came disguised as a weekend trip to his hometown, a small, painfully charming place called Oakhaven. It was the kind of town with a single main street, where people still knew their neighbors. He was so excited to have me meet his parents, to show me where he grew up. I tried to invent a work emergency, a sudden illness, anything. But the look of pure, boyish anticipation on his face made it impossible. I was trapped. His parents were exactly what I expected, warm, unassuming, and utterly devoted to their son. His mom, Carol, hugged me like she'd known me for years. His dad, Frank, grilled burgers in the backyard and told terrible jokes that Everett groaned at. But I could see the deep affection beneath the surface. They showed me photo albums filled with pictures of a gap-toothed Everett at school picnics and on family vacations. They looked at me with such open, welcoming eyes, seeing me not as a stranger, but as the woman who made their son happy. With every smile I faked and every polite laugh I forced, I felt a piece of my soul corrode. I was a virus in this wholesome, happy ecosystem. The final blow landed on Saturday night. The air was cool and smelled of freshly cut grass. We were sitting on the old wooden swing on his parents' front porch, the chains creaking softly. Inside, the muffled sounds of the TV played. For a while, we just sat in a comfortable silence, watching the fireflies blink in the twilight. He pointed to the house across the street. "That's where the Millers live," he said softly. "Mr. Miller still brings my mom a tomato from his garden every August, just like he did when I was 5. My dad pretends to be annoyed, but he loves it." He chuckled, then turned to me. The casual, nostalgic mood shifted instantly. His eyes, in the dim porch light, were completely unguarded. They were filled with a terrifying combination of love, absolute trust, and a quiet, profound certainty that stripped me bare. "You know," he said, his voice low but steady, "watching my parents all these years, they're so in sync. It always seemed like such an impossible thing to find. Like catching lightning in a bottle." He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His touch felt like a brand. "But being with you, Helena, for the first time in my life, I feel like I understand it. I feel the possibility of forever." That was it. That was the sound of the world breaking. The word forever hit me with the force of a physical blow. In that single, devastating moment, my carefully constructed reality imploded. This wasn't a game anymore. It wasn't a project. It was a good man's heart, and I was holding it in my hands, knowing I was about to crush it into dust. The air left my lungs. All I could see was the unwavering belief in his eyes, and all I could feel was the monumental, suffocating weight of my lie. The deception was no longer a shield. It was a bomb, and I had just heard it start to tick. The drive back to Denver was a masterclass in self-sabotage. The intimacy of that moment on the porch had terrified me so completely that my only instinct was to burn everything to the ground. I became a different person. I was irritable, critical, and distant. I picked fights over nothing: the music he chose, the way he was driving, the restaurant he suggested for a late dinner. I was hoping, praying, that he would get angry, that he would call me crazy, that he would give me an excuse to run. I needed him to be the bad guy so I wouldn't have to be. But Everett didn't get angry. He just got quiet. He'd absorb my petty attacks with a confused, wounded look in his eyes, a look that made my stomach churn with self-loathing. He kept asking, "What's wrong? Did I do something?" And I would just snap, "Nothing, I'm fine." It was a slow, agonizing campaign of psychological warfare, and I was the only one fighting. The breaking point came a week later. It was a Tuesday night. I had started a fight over something so monumentally stupid, I can't even remember what it was. I think it was about him leaving a wet towel on the bathroom floor. I escalated it, twisting his words, accusing him of not respecting me, of not listening. It was a desperate, ugly performance, designed to push him away for good. He let me finish my tirade. The apartment was silent except for the sound of my own ragged breathing. I expected him to finally yell back, to storm out. Instead, he just stood there in the middle of the living room, his shoulders slumped, looking utterly exhausted. The anger and confusion had drained from his face, replaced by a terrible, dawning clarity. He looked at me, not with anger, but with a profound and devastating sadness. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it cut through the air like a razor. "Helena," he said, and the way he said my name made my blood run cold. It wasn't the warm, affectionate tone I was used to. It was the voice of a man addressing a stranger. "You don't love me, do you?" The question hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the room. It wasn't an accusation, it was a statement of fact. A conclusion he had finally, painfully, reached. My carefully constructed world shattered. There was no more room to lie, no more space to perform. I just stared at him, my mouth opening and closing like a fish, and the only thing that came out was a pathetic, broken sob. That was all the answer he needed. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just nodded slowly, a single, heartbreaking gesture of acceptance. "I see," he said. He walked past me into the bedroom, pulled his duffel bag out of the closet, and began to pack his things with a calm, methodical precision that was more terrifying than any rage could have been. The finality of it was absolute. This wasn't a fight. This was an ending, and I had orchestrated every single second of it. In the hours after he walked out the door, a frantic, animalistic panic took over. I bombarded his phone, hundreds of texts, a chaotic stream of apologies, excuses, and desperate pleas. "I made a mistake. Please come back. I can fix this. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." They were all sent, one after another, into a digital void. No replies, not even the cold comfort of a read receipt. I called him, and after the fourth ring, it went to voicemail, his familiar, cheerful voice on the recording a cruel mockery. "Hey, you've reached Everett. Leave a message." I left a dozen, each one more rambling and hysterical than the last. I even drove to his apartment, my heart pounding, but his car was gone. The lights were off. He had simply vanished. The next day, desperate for an ally, for someone to tell me I wasn't a monster, I called my best friend, Olivia. I sobbed the whole story to her over the phone, but I edited it carefully. I framed myself as the tragic, lonely girl who made a foolish error in judgment. I emphasized how kind he was, how much I had come to care for him, and how a moment of fear had made me push him away. I was casting myself as the protagonist in a sad romance, not the villain in a horror story. Olivia listened patiently until I had cried myself out. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she was gathering the words to comfort me. I was wrong. "Helena," she said, her voice devoid of its usual warmth. It was flat, clinical. "You didn't make a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. What you did was calculated. You used a human being as a prescription to treat your own issues." Her words were like a slap in the face. "That's not fair," I stammered. I was hurting. I was so alone. Everyone gets lonely. she cut me off, her voice rising with a rare flash of anger. That doesn't give you a license to treat people like disposable objects. You didn't just break his heart, Helena. You took his trust, his kindness, his sincerity, and you weaponized it for your own comfort. You didn't just hurt a good man. You probably ruined him for the next person who actually deserves him. You're not the victim here. Stop acting like it. The call ended shortly after that. I sat there in the silence, her words echoing in the empty apartment. She hadn't offered me absolution, she had handed me a mirror. And for the first time, I was forced to look at the reflection, at the selfish, cowardly person I had become. The story I had been telling myself, that I was a victim of my own loneliness, crumbled into dust, leaving only the ugly, undeniable truth. It's been 3 months. The frantic energy of those first few weeks has curdled into a thick, permanent layer of dread. The silence in my apartment is back, but it's different now. It's not just empty. It's heavy with his absence. It's a silence that accuses me. Last week, I was looking for a charging cable and opened the drawer of the nightstand on his side of the bed. Tucked in the back was his old Kindle, the one he'd replaced but hadn't gotten around to selling. I turned it on, not knowing what I was looking for. His library popped up, and there on the home screen was a document titled PNW Trip. My heart stopped. I opened it. It was a meticulously planned itinerary for a 2-week road trip through the Pacific Northwest, something we had talked about in passing. He had researched hiking trails in Oregon, whale-watching tour in Washington, and quirky little bed and breakfasts along the coast. He had links to restaurants, notes on the best times to visit certain landmarks, even a budget spreadsheet. The whole thing was planned for next spring. Near the bottom of the document, under a section titled MISC, was a single link. My hand was trembling as I clicked it. It took me to a website for a custom jeweler, displaying a simple, elegant engagement ring with a small sapphire, my birthstone. I think I made a sound, a choked, guttural noise. I slammed the Kindle shut as if it had burned me. This wasn't just a fantasy. It was a plan, a future, a life he was building for us, brick by loving brick, while I was still telling myself, just 1 more week. That document was the tangible proof of the beautiful thing I had methodically demolished. Now this is my life. Every night I fall into the same pathetic ritual. I open Instagram. I type his name into the search bar. His profile is private now, but his friends are not. So I click on their profiles, one by one, a digital ghost haunting the edges of his new life. There he is, in a group photo at a brewery, smiling. It's not the dazzling, unguarded smile he used to give me, but it's a start. There's another picture of him and Buster, the golden retriever, on a mountain trail, the sun on their faces. He looks okay. He looks like he's healing. He's moving on. And I'm stuck here, in the prison I built for myself, scrolling through pictures of a life I was invited into and chose to set on fire. Every photo is a fresh stab of guilt. He's rebuilding, and I am the rubble. This is my punishment, not a dramatic confrontation or a tearful reunion, but this. The quiet, unending hell of knowing I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me, and I have absolutely no one to blame but myself.